Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
There's no turning back now.
Let's put on the show.
You're listening to the Station 71 podcast. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Beth
and Brian.
So we have a fun topic this week. I know we've been away for a little bit because of the holiday and some technical difficulties, so it's good to be back in the pilot's chair here and talking Disney. And I know that that's going to change when I bring up our last news topic. So first things first, let's talk about some fun stuff. Moana, the Journey of Water, it looks like it's still on track to be built. They have updated the feature entrance rocks and they've started to take shape. So this attraction that we all kind of speculated may have been dying is still on the horizon. I'm excited for it. It's probably not going to be that exciting of an attraction, but I love stuff like this. So it's cool that it's still there. It's cool that it didn't get chopped.
Yeah, I think it looks like a pretty cool little interactive area. So I'm excited to see it actually take shape.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be like, a huge attraction that anybody was really like super like, set their hearts on. But I think it's going to be an awesome little addition to kind of the, just the environment of Epcot.
I feel like it's going to be very Swiss Family Treehouse. Like, That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this. And it's cool. I like that. I think as much as we can complain about the footprint that takes up, I think we need stuff like that. And I hope that this is cool. I hope that this kind of takes the place of Interventions and we get like some neat little walkthrough stuff.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a little bit of a bizarre one here. Disney's modified the Cosmic Rewind exit to add some additional trash cans to assist with the motion sickness concerns that they've been having with this attraction.
Bro, the more I hear about this, the more nervous it makes me to ride it. Like, I love roller coasters, but I also am the type of person that I can get motion sick if it's not like good timing, as far as I have to have eaten recently, but not too recently. And it has to be, like weird things like Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy makes me so sick, and you're not even moving in that. So now I'm just like,
is this because of the motion or anything?
Well, yeah, but it's just like I am kind of scared to ride this, but excited. I don't know. All I hear is throw up every time everyone talks about it.
That's funny because like I hear a lot of really good things about it, but I also too have heard a lot of the motion sickness concerns. So I'm right there with you. Like, I think it's going to be a good ride, and I think I'm going to enjoy it when I do eventually get to do it. But it is kind of alarming how much this comes up in discussion.
Man, I'm just imagining people getting off of this immediately and like running over to lean over a trash can, and that terrifies me.
Horrible.
Well, I do love thinking back to like when this happened with Body Wars, and Disney went through and said, okay, what do we need to do to make this attraction not make people sick? And here they're just like, what do we need to do to allow people to throw up in the trash?
Right.
They're like,
well, we can't change the attraction, so we'll just make it easier for them to puke afterwards.
Well, final news topic that we had to discuss this week is that it looks like Disney has decided to extend Bob Chapeck's contract, including an annual $20 million bonus.
Ew.
So it looks like we're not getting rid of him anytime soon.
Ugh.
This is like, the more I think about it, it's not as surprising as it feels like it should be. But I also really don't like it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, anybody that, works in finance, I'm sure saw this coming 1,000 miles away.
Right.
Dude's making the company money, and unfortunately, that's all that really matters.
I know. I hate that. It's like, who cares about guest satisfaction or like experience? And as long as you keep making money, I don't want to get too political, but man, capitalism sucks.
I do kind of wonder, like, at the end of, not really like the end of the pandemic, because we're at the point now where things are starting to open at like fuller capacity, right? Like the parks are even open at a higher capacity. But I wonder at the end of all of this, like what that means for him, like what his goal is now that there's not really that guise of like, oh, we have to crunch down on everything. I wonder if people are going to get more critical of him because of that, which may be a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It just seems like I'm not the one that gets to make the call. He's done nothing deserving of a $20 million bonus, in my opinion. But obviously the big wigs and the shareholding community feel differently. So
you are not wrong there, my friend.
Well, I think good or bad over the years, though, whether or not you've liked who is in charge, it feels like every CEO kind of like left something in their legacy. And I don't really see, at least so far, what Chapeck's legacy is going to be, other than this very negative media storm and the fact that he raised stock prices,
Yeah.
I feel like you can look back at Eisner with all of his faults, but as soon as you get on like an Eisner era attraction, you immediately say, oh, this feels like, Disney in the 90s. And it's, at least he has that, but I don't.
At least he tried, it felt like he was trying to do something, for better or worse. He was trying to do something that people would like.
Yes, it wasn't just how much money can we make.
Right.
And even if you think about it like that too, I mean, Brian makes a really good point. Like what is the legacy that comes out of this? But at the same time, like I think stockholders and share prices isn't really like a lasting legacy. Like
it's not.
And at the end of the day, people are going to come back to this and be like, well, like Beth said, what did he do for us? And I think that's where it's going to be really interesting to see the next couple of years play out. Like, I think Chapeck has to take a focus on something.
Right.
And I'm curious to see what it is, but I'm also like a little nervous too.
And it's like we talked about before, kind of with this, just at a certain point when you are, having a lot of negative PR come out about how you're running the company, and you see this very dramatic shift in the price points with everything. We talk about how that's really kind of a short-term solution to this long-term. How does that change people's like a generational, attitude towards the Disney company? Because that is, I think, and it's not all Chapeck, obviously. Like Iger, I think, was a huge part of that too. But the overall attitude towards Disney in certain years, I think, from like the common, most like people that aren't huge Disney fans like us, the common people. I was about to say that sounds so bad, but like, I don't think that overall Disney has a very good public perception lately. And
I totally agree.
And 10, 15, 20 years, when does that finally, all this time you spend chasing stockholder price, catch up to you? And the legacy that you've left, this being, the public perception that Disney doesn't have anymore, how do you fix a company at that point?
Yeah.
Good point. It was a really good point. I don't know. I think it's hard to find a spot where they're going to come out of this. And I don't know. I know we talk about this a lot, and I think the last couple of years have been something that we've all kind of felt negatively about when it comes to Disney, but I really hope it turns around. And I hope that we are wrong at the end of this. That's the one thing that, like, I don't think we will be, because I feel like there's been so much public that shouldn't have been public when it comes to like the Disney ins and outs lately. But I really hope that at the end of this we are wrong.
Yeah.
Me too.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can do. But now that we've talked about that, let's talk about something fun and exciting and talk a little bit about this topic that was suggested to us, because I think we're going to have fun with this one. We like to armchair Imagineer, and I think this topic is perfect. So this comes from a listener on our Discord, and it's been kind of a long time coming on this one. So apologies on the late response here. But DMG 550 said, what about doing an episode that's like Marvel What Ifs, but do Disney What Ifs? So he gave us a couple suggestions, and I think we're going to probably start with those first. Like, what does Animal Kingdom look like if they built Beastly Kingdom instead of Dinoland? Does Dinoland ever get built, unlike Beastly Kingdom? Does Pandora ever get built? If not, what does Disney do in competition for Harry Potter look in general? So I am curious to see how this goes for all of us, because I threw a couple in here. I think we've got a couple fun ones to talk about, and I think this is going to spiral very quickly. So do we want to start with the one that was recommended to us?
Sure.
Okay. So I guess let's start at the very beginning of this. So what does it look like if Disney builds Beastly Kingdom? Anybody have any thoughts on that first before I start yelling about Beastly Kingdom?
Yeah, I do think this is one of the great disappointments of most Disney fans.
Yes. Even as a Chester and Hester's apologist, I have to say, I don't think it holds a candle to what Beastly Kingdom would have been if they had gone through with it, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, on the one hand, we do Beastly Kingdom. I think we would have had a very cool land. We probably never would have had Pandora.
I would agree.
I think they'd be able to get both of those in the same park.
Oh, I don't think so at all.
And I don't think you really need it at that point. Like, the whole idea behind Beastly Kingdom was, we got to have the fantasy aspect of it, like the mythical creatures and stuff. So if you already have that, why look further?
Right.
I also think it's like if they don't build Dinoland, I think they have to do something to kind of compete with like that section of the park, because that is kind of a big draw. But I think that what's it called? Beastly Kingdom can become a more immersive land. So I wonder if we get like immersive theming and immersive lands a lot quicker because of that. And even just God.
Well, I think so. Because with Beastly Kingdom, you've got more of an open concept of what it can be, and I think that would have given it time, to be a complete land when it opened up for it to grow over time. Whereas Pandora had to be kind of like complete and dropped in at once.
Yeah, that's fair. So the next part of that question, I guess, is, we talked about, does Pandora ever get built? But if Pandora doesn't get built, what do they do to compete with Harry Potter?
So I came up with a concept that I thought, because, they don't have the rights to Harry Potter, what's something that's like, this is not as big of like a phenomenon, I guess, as Harry Potter, but I thought it would have been really cool for them to do a Studio Ghibli land.
Ooh, interesting.
Because I feel like it's a very overlapping. I'm not going to say, the Venn diagram's a circle, but it's a pretty good shape there.
Yeah.
Of Disney fans and Studio Ghibli fans. And I think that could have been a really cool tie-in. It's an IP. Harry Potter's an IP, so it's not like, we're coming up with original somethings here, but I think it would have been really cool to see stuff like that, especially having seen like overseas the Studio Ghibli museums and park aspects that they have in certain areas.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. I honestly don't know that I can come up with anything that's going to compete with that, but I like the idea of that being like what they do to kind of compete with Harry Potter.
Because honestly, I think the kind of like the Studio Ghibli magical aspect fits in with Disney a lot better than like the Harry Potter magical aspect would have.
Oh yeah,
right, for sure.
I also think it kind of fits the theme of Animal Kingdom a lot better too. Like I don't know. I don't want to say that like the magical theming of that is kind of what makes Pandora work well, but I think it like Pandora has the whole conservation elements, and I think you can kind of find a way to work that in with those themes. I think Harry Potter, I mean, we'll probably talk about that later because there is another one that kind of ties in with that, but I think that specifically would fit better in somewhere like Hollywood Studios.
Mhm.
Harry Potter?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, if you look into, it's not even, you don't even have to look that hard to find the conservation aspect of a lot of Studio Ghibli films. It's pretty blatant, so that I feel like would have worked perfectly in Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, I like that.
Did you have another idea of a land that could compete with Harry Potter?
I do not personally. I think it's hard because personally, Pandora doesn't really. I don't think Pandora competes with it. I know I've talked about that before. I feel like Pandora was more of a knee-jerk reaction than an actual like direct response.
Like, I love
For
Pandora,
sure.
don't get me wrong, and it's pretty, but I mean, it's small. It's not nearly the scale of, not only, the Harry Potter, there's a Harry Potter piece at each of the two Universal parks. There's also, each one is bigger than Pandora.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got two of them, and they're each bigger, so it's like, so much more to do and experience, I feel like, in the Harry Potter lands than there is in Pandora. Because, I mean, we got 2 attractions, and most people don't even care about one of them in Pandora. But then Harry Potter, you have like 3 attractions in one.
Yeah.
And one in another. 2 in another. 1.
Yeah, I think 1.
Yeah.
I don't, it's been a while.
But they're really, really cool attractions. Like 2 of them at least are like super awesome, cool attractions. Flight of Passage, super awesome, cool attraction, but it's, it's one versus the many.
I also think that's the unfortunate nature of like the what's it called of Pandora. I think it's the 2 attractions that they have in there are only going to be 2 attractions, and Harry Potter has so much more room.
I do want to backtrack a little and say 3. I only said 2 because I haven't been on Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure yet, but I've heard really good things. So 3 really, really cool attractions versus the 1 really cool attraction.
Oh no, I don't know what they could even do to compete with it. I don't think that Disney has a property that would. I think honestly, if Dino Land doesn't get built, maybe it gets scrapped and used when Harry Potter comes up. But I think having Beastly Kingdom would probably be a more interactive and immersive land that would have kickstarted this whole immersive theming thing in a different way. I also think that it kind of makes, and maybe this is just me saying this because we didn't get it, but I feel like it kind of then makes Pandora more of a solved land than it is already. Like there's not really much you can get rid of at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The only other
probably just bias. So
the only other thing I could come up with that could be a direct competitor to Harry Potter, which this legitimately would be, is if they got the whole Marvel contract situated, and that we could have that stuff on the East Coast.
Honestly, maybe that's even part of the whole what if thing is like if Beastly Kingdom comes to Animal Kingdom, Harry Potter's direct response doesn't come to Animal Kingdom. It comes to Hollywood Studios.
Right. They could have taken all of Galaxy's Edge and Star Wars and Toy Story and made that into one big Marvel land, and I would have been cool with it.
I still think we would get Star Wars Land as a result of Harry Potter, because I feel like we've said this a couple times, and I know I just said it, that Pandora was the knee-jerk reaction to Harry Potter, but Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was the actual response.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense. And I like Galaxy's Edge too, don't get me wrong, but I'm more of a Marvel person, so I wish that that could have happened.
Yeah, I agree. So let's look at another one that we have on here. Are there any of them that I mentioned to you guys before that stood out that you want to start with, or?
Well, since we're kind of on the subject, what if Disney got the rights to Harry Potter?
Okay, that's interesting. I think it goes in Hollywood Studios.
For sure.
I feel like that's a given. Like we definitely have to start there.
Yeah.
What do you think it replaces? Like, what part of Hollywood Studios do you think it replaces?
I think they would have stuck it right where Galaxy's Edge is. I think they probably would have ended up doing away with Star Tours.
Probably.
And just having that entrance pulled back a little bit. Probably gotten rid of Muppet's Courtyard too, and just converted that whole area into Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I also think this is maybe me being a little cynical, but I think part of that would be that they don't do anything with it because they know that Universal wants to do something with it.
See, I was thinking the best thing that they could do if they had acquired the rights to Harry Potter would be just sit on it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if they have the rights to Star Wars, they acquire the rights to Harry Potter and then don't do anything with it, and Universal isn't able to build, any of the Harry Potter themed lands that they have, Disney would seem light years ahead of Universal Studios. And that would be hard to bounce back from if you're Universal, I think.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I feel like if they don't do anything, it's almost better than them doing something.
Right. Well, we look at what they were going to do and why they were not able to acquire the rights to Harry Potter. And it seems very clear that they were not going to give it its due.
I also think, and this is, I don't know if this is like cynical still, but I think that if Disney gets the rights to Harry Potter, then it becomes less of the actual world of Harry Potter, and it's more like a place in the Harry Potter universe that is not anywhere that's in the books. Because that seems to be the trend, right? Like Galaxy's Edge it's a planet that's in Star Wars that's not in the movies. Like, do we get downtown London in Hollywood Studios? And it's like, all right, well, maybe they were there at some point because that's kind of the trend for for Disney and immersive lands.
No, and honestly, not just to throw shade at Hollywood Studios, but especially if it was put in Hollywood Studios, which we can almost agree that it would have been, we see their, how they do a lot of it. I don't think they would have cared to blend it into anything. I think they would have plopped down one or two Harry Potter attractions, kind of like how Star Tours used to be. It's like just out of nowhere. It's like, boom. Okay. You're in the Star Wars universe before Galaxy's Edge was built. I think they would have done something like that.
Well, actually, I was having a thought while you were saying that. I think, funny enough, if Disney acquired the rights to Harry Potter, right? I think the funniest thing that they could possibly do is this doesn't trigger the catalyst of immersive lands. So we get a Harry Potter set themed attraction that fits in with old Hollywood Studios. Hollywood Studios doesn't change to what it is now. And I think on top of that, it's not you're in the world of Harry Potter. It's how did they make Harry Potter?
Ooh.
That's pretty cool.
I don't think Disney would be a good company to do that, funny enough. Like I have very little faith in them actually doing that, right? But I think that that's kind of like, so my mind, the way that I'm tracking this is Harry Potter land triggers Pandora as a knee-jerk reaction. Both of them are immersive lands. After that becomes Galaxy's Edge, and then kind of by proxy Toy Story Land, like the two of those come around the same time. And I think that if we don't have that initial trigger, the butterfly effect is, where do we put it? Hollywood Studios, make it blend in with Hollywood Studios.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it would have been pretty terrible. I'm definitely, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan. I've read the books, seen all the movies a couple times. Actually, read them all recently, and I can definitely say that even as someone that's not a huge fan, I think it would have been pretty disappointing to see Disney do kind of like a half-hearted effort into doing Harry Potter. You know, and I think that's just part of Disney being as big as they are. Like Harry Potter would have kind of just been another arrow in Disney's quiver, I think. Whereas when Universal got the rights to it, they're like, this is our big thing and we're going to devote everything we have to it. And it worked out really well.
Right.
But I don't think Disney would do that because they have so many other IPs.
Yeah.
I think that that's absolutely right because, like you said, they have so much under their belt that they can already do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess staying in Hollywood studios, I really do want to do this one, and I don't know if it's maybe too early to throw this out there. What if Muppets Courtyard was a full land? I think this one's kind of a sad one because in my mind, when I was thinking about this, I think it makes Galaxy's Edge either a harder decision or it makes it a more tragic tale of a land that takes over from something that could have been beloved.
Yeah, I would be very happy to see what they would have created getting a full land. I'm still in this day and age, no, I'm not surprised that it hasn't expanded just because obviously Star Wars is the moneymaker IP, so they're going to go with that. But I'm very surprised that the Muppet expansion never happened. It's still a fairly successful IP that Disney's had for decades now. It's shocking to me that there's not more Muppet stuff.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, we get everything that we've talked about before, right? Like that's kind of what we're expecting out of this, right? Like we get the Great Muppet Movie Ride, we get the I guess Muppet Vision's still there, like all of that stuff. That's how we're thinking of this because in my mind, what I'm thinking is that we get all of that. That's great. Everything's fine and dandy. But at the same time, unfortunately, I think when it comes time for Galaxy's Edge, it still goes away.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so. You're right. I mean, Disney would for sure bulldoze down the Muppets to make room for Star Wars, which I'm still so surprised that it is sandwiched in between Star Tours and Galaxy's Edge and still around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I love it.
What do you guys think happens like at opening? Do we think that this land is more or less popular than or not even at opening, but like later in the life cycle of Hollywood studios? Do you think it's more or less say I don't know, the Sunset Boulevard area? Or do we think this is like a niche little like fan corner?
I think it would be a niche fan corner. I as much as I love the Muppets, I don't think that they could make anything that would compete with the appeal of Tower of Terror and even Rock and Roller Coaster, for two like very unique experiences that you get within the Disney parks.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it needs to have an e-ticket attraction, but I don't think Disney would ever really put an e-ticket attraction in even if they were to expand it, into this Muppets land.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think it would ever be as popular as Sunset Boulevard.
Unfortunately, but I kind of think, as I was thinking about this, I was like, this is either incredible or the biggest disappointment of my life.
Yeah, it's another one of those things. I think it goes back to like what I was saying with Harry Potter. It's like it's another arrow in Disney's quiver, so they don't need to go all out for it, and they don't. And that is kind of one of the sad things about Disney having so much.
You know what? I mean, this is good.
Oh no, that was it.
I was just gonna say, I was thinking about this while you were talking, and it kind of funny to think about. What if the Muppets ABC series was actually a success?
Ooh.
Like, not that that's anything that kind of correlates with the Disney parks, but like, what does that mean for them? Does that mean that we get more Muppets? Do we get, I don't know. That was just a weird little thought. Side note.
I mean, it is a good question. It always feels like Disney's very reserved with what they do with the Muppets for whatever reason, which is why I was so pleasantly surprised with the Muppets Haunted Mansion special, because it really felt like for the first time in a long time that Disney really, really put like an A effort into what they were doing with the Muppets. So that's the thing. It's like, so what if the ABC series is successful? We get more like a Muppets fandom following, and people are begging for more Muppets like we have been, Does that push Disney into doing it? I mean, I'd love to see that, but I think you're right. I think the success of that series would have been a big turning point for what Disney's doing with the Muppets nowadays.
100%. Are there any on here that you wanted to talk about, Beth? I don't know if you have the list up.
I do. I have the list up. I'm looking at it now.
I just kind of threw a bunch together while I was sitting here thinking about it, because I feel like I love the idea of like a butterfly effect where like this thing changes that thing, but I'm so bad about thinking of them.
So, have you guys seen the Tomorrowland movie?
Yes.
What if that had not been a flop?
Oh, 100% Disney updates Tomorrowland, right? Like,
right. That's what I think that was the goal, but then they didn't advertise the movie enough, in my opinion. I think it's a good film. I enjoy it. And I wish that more of that had been brought over to our Tomorrowland. But Disney said, well, not that many people watched it, so I guess we don't need to do anything about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how exactly they would have incorporated it into Tomorrowland other than maybe just modernizing the aesthetic of it. Which, I mean, they have done a little here and there. They repainted the rocks. They butchered the purple wall.
Remember when Disney didn't like follow what the social media trends were with themselves?
Right. So what, while we're, kind of just daydreaming here, what would y'all do with Tomorrowland? Obviously, other than getting rid of the Speedway to make it more modern and, a better overall land.
So my thought with Tomorrowland has always been, I think we need to ditch the idea of Tomorrowland. And I think that the problem that Tomorrowland has, and we've talked about this a couple times, is that tomorrow always inevitably comes, right? Like you eventually get to the point where Tomorrowland is dated because the concept of Tomorrowland is now, gone. I would like to see them take the timeline out of it. I would like to see them opt for a more, I want to say like not futuristic, but like sci-fi futuristic approach.
Yeah.
Like get a maybe steampunk aesthetic to it.
Ooh,
or
I
something
like
along those lines. Like give it something that's not set in a time period and put it in a more fantasy setting, because it also kind of ties into Magic Kingdom a little bit better if it's not realistic, right? Like it's right next to Fantasyland. Throw something fantasy based in there. I think
have one word.
What's that?
Dreamfinder.
Yes.
Ooh.
Honestly, it's wild that they have not.
They're sleeping on him.
Well,
all these years.
Not even just sleeping on him specifically, but like I feel like they've done such a weird job with actually putting him in the parks, because that is literally the perfect spot to put him.
Yeah.
It is. You know, it's funny. We've talked about like how much Disney has worked on acquiring IPs, and yet they seem to want to do so little with some of their most popular existing ones
Yeah.
that they came up with.
They're greedy. They just want to have it all, but not use it.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it all in their pockets.
That's wild. I wish that they would do something with that because it feels like it's so close.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mara. They got to do something either sci-fi, steampunkish, or I think they really have to just fully lean into that retrofuturism concept that's, I feel like, kind of been lost over the year, or that came about kind of accidentally just from not updating the land, and then it just being retrofuturistic by the fact that it wasn't updated. But I feel like either you got to completely lean into that, or you got to do away with Tomorrowland and completely retheme it.
I also I hate the idea of Disney as like a museum, but I would love the concept of Tomorrowland being, I mean, I guess this is technically Epcot, but like how have we innovated the concept of tomorrow too? Like it doesn't have to be in the future, but it could also be like, what are we doing to be better about tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, that would be good.
If they really had the courage, they would do updated attractions as needed.
They really have the courage, they would just make Epcot too.
Yes. That's a mini Epcot. That's what you could call it.
Mini Epcot.
Baby Future World. Hey, make it Future World. They don't have Future World's not a thing anymore, technically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just translate all that over. I wouldn't mind. Bring back the goodies. You can make it Nostalgia Land for all I care. Bring back some stuff that we miss.
I just wish that land didn't feel so bad to walk into.
Yeah.
Nothing about that feels good.
I like the rocks.
Yeah, that's fair.
They're shiny.
They are.
And I like Sunny. He's the saving grace of Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
But even him is nostalgia,
Yeah, that's fair. Sunny's weird because like it still kind of fits that theme that I was talking about where it's like a sci-fi future. But at the same time, it's like it feels very dated.
But in a charming way.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of seemed like with, Laugh Floor and Stitch's Great Escape that maybe they were going to kind of lean into more of a sci-fi futuristic concept, but then they kind of just abandoned that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Tron will pull it all together.
Maybe Tron is what we needed all along. Is that still a meet and greet area? Stitch's Great Escape?
So.
I have no clue, but
I don't think they were doing anything with it when there wasn't, meet and greets, but I think they're opening that back up just into the Stitch meet and greet.
Here's another one. What if they kept Alien Encounter around? Original Alien Encounter.
Yeah. I would probably not be terrified of it now as an adult.
I also think the funny thing about that is I think that got cut because they obviously it was too terrifying, but does that become a classic attraction now that it's, if it stays around longer? Do they realize that there's not really much they can put in there?
I think it would have definitely been a cult following at the very least, just because of looking back at it, how ridiculously absurd it would be to have that in the Magic Kingdom because of it feels out of place in a good way though, that you're transported to this entire theme park of childhood fantasy, and then out of nowhere there's terrifying attraction that you can go to. So I think it would have been looked upon very favorably even today.
Well, and that's another question that, like, your thing brings up another question for me. If that stays around, does that change the prospect of Tomorrowland? Like, do we get a more sci-fi Tomorrowland? Because I think with that, it kind of fits in a better. I mean, it doesn't fit into Magic Kingdom as much, but it definitely fits into the idea of Tomorrowland a lot better.
Yeah.
I could even see not only it being more of the sci-fi aspect, but even Tomorrowland becoming more of like the adult section of Magic Kingdom.
So what you're saying is give us a bar in Tomorrowland?
Yes.
Yeah. Bring liquor into the Magic Kingdom.
I have a funny one, but I think this is maybe like a good one to do right before we do the last one. Okay. What if they never closed an Epcot attraction? Like, just never closed a single attraction that was in there. All of them constantly got updated. It is the Epcot purist dream. But they don't actually change the attractions. They just refresh them so the animatronics look new. I think Epcot becomes the arguably worst park.
What? No.
I mean, it's got to evolve at some point.
I mean, okay, what really positive thing have we gotten out of an Epcot attraction closing?
This is a fair question.
This is a fair question.
But what have we missed out on by having stuff closed? All these attractions that we look back on fondly. What have we gotten from their closures?
All right, I think I'm switching sides. I'm with Brian.
Hold on. There's a couple things, and they're all really weirdly funny to me that this is the way that I'm going to take this. But so if Epcot attractions don't close, they just constantly get refreshed animatronics. We never get Ellen's Energy Adventure, which, for better or worse, gave us a lot of good meme lines. We also don't get Test Track at all. That stays as World of Motion, which, I mean, we can argue about Test Track 1.0 versus 2.0, but I think having that thrill ride, even in the form of original Test Track, is probably better than World of Motion. But we also don't get Guardians of the Galaxy, which has been getting a lot of praise in terms of attraction. Like, there's some stuff that we miss on.
Yeah.
But the inverse of that is that we keep the original Imagination, which is probably better than all of that. So I don't know that I'm selling it here.
See, we keep original Journey to Imagination. Body Wars gets updated into like a true motion simulator attraction.
We lose Soarin' for Food Rocks. That's another one. Or
I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so indifferent on that because I feel like Soarin' at least is an attraction.
That's true. That's, even though I've had my gripes with Soarin', I think that's probably the most overwhelmingly popular. Like, okay, this is the obvious positive one that came out. Like something like an e-ticket attraction replaced what was like a show, which is a huge step up, even though I don't like the attraction that much. But yeah, I don't know. The caveat with it actually having to be like the original attraction, it puts it in a strange. I think we get a lot of good and a lot of bad. Right. A lot of really, really highs and a lot of really low lows. So.
Yeah.
I figured if you do it like none of it, the Epcot attractions close, like you get in this weird position where it's like that is arguably better. Like, yeah, it is probably better if it doesn't close. But at the same time, then it's like, okay, well, yeah, but if they just update things, it's not really fun. I don't know. I have this running theory that Horizons would have been dated well before the time that it would have become a classic. So
I agree with that. Honestly, looking back, I wish I'd really gotten the chance to experience Horizons, like especially as an adult. But I do like watching ride through videos. It's cool, and I think I would have liked it, but at the same time, it's like if Disney had, if that existed today in that and in the how it was when it shut down, people would be making fun of it, like
Oh,
undoubtedly.
absolutely. I think people make fun of Carousel of Progress for being dated, and I think if Horizons was around today and the capacity it was, and we know that they weren't going to update it, it would have been not a classic attraction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we can do one more. We did Beastly Kingdom. We got Rights to Harry Potter. Epcot attractions never closed. I have two on here. I don't know if either of these are really good, but I have what if Disney's America got built, and what if Disney builds Western River Expedition? I think the more butterfly effecty one is Disney's America, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that opens the door for parks that Disney just wants to build for whatever reason, I think.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I think, Disney having like too many irons in the fire at once, and I think we would have lost a lot of development at Disney World, and Disney's America would have been this kind of like very half-hearted park that they built, and also like Disney would have opened up a PR nightmare building that. And I think they kind of already did on a small scale when they were even in talks of doing it. So
Oh yeah. I think that
would have been real bad.
I think Disney's public image is horrible after that. I think if it goes off and they actually successfully build the park, like honestly, I think it's kind of crazy because then we have a Disney park not in a necessarily like tropical coastal area. Not that Florida is tropical, but more of a seasonal paced Disney park, which is kind of bizarre. God, there's so many weird things that could have happened because of that. I wonder if we lose like Liberty Square because of that too. That's another thought that I was having with this one.
Maybe.
They could have made it New Orleans Square. That's fine.
Yeah.
They probably should have made it New Orleans.
We would prefer that if I can speak for myself at least.
I've never even been to Disneyland, and I still think that would have been an improvement.
Yeah.
It's still so funny to me, like that Disney thought like, oh, Florida's too close to New Orleans. Like people are just gonna want to go see the real thing, and like I've never been to New Orleans. I don't know
No,
a
that's
whole lot
not
of
the
people
case.
that live in Florida that have been to New Orleans, really. So I don't really understand that argument behind it, but
Yeah.
whatever.
What do we think like the bad press of it all ends up being with that? Like we know Disney was gonna have some catastrophe of a PR nightmare on their hands if it came to like actually going through with this.
I think you get a very similar backlash to what they got for Euro Disneyland on a much bigger scale.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, because that was the thing, was that, you know, Euro Disneyland, they said, you know, don't Mickey Mouse our culture, and a lot of people, you know,
Mickey Mouse our culture.
I say Mickey Mouse is our culture in America, so I don't really feel like that would be an issue.
Yeah,
I still think it's like the whole issue is you are kind of, I don't know how to word this correctly, but kind of choosing to put it where they were going to put it. You're kind of trampling. I don't know, that's a bad way to say it, but you're kind of taking an area that's known for such actual historical significance in America, and you are creating a Mickey Mouse version of that. You know, it's.
Yeah.
I think, and honestly, I don't think the bad press that they would receive would have been unearned. I think that it would have been a cool concept for a park, but you know, I don't think it was a good decision, and I think it was the right decision to not do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. We got enough
It
of
would've been
America
fun to
here.
watch.
Well-
So if Disney's America gets built, we don't have Hall of Presidents, right?
Oh, it
Oh, what a-
120% gets moved to Disney's
What a
America.
loss that would be. Oh no.
Any closing thoughts on Disney what ifs? Any like quick hit ones you guys want to hit before we wrap this up?
I had a quick hit one, which maybe won't be too quick, but I'll throw it in there real quick. What if Walt had ended up living into the 80s?
Oh, this is a really good one to end on. Epcot looks drastically different, right? Like that's the first bit.
As we know from Brian's many history lessons, Walt would have been like, spend money first, ask questions later. And I feel like that would have been great for the consumer, but not great for the company.
Oh, absolutely. Like,
but it would have been a time to be alive.
Oh, absolutely. When I was thinking about this, I thought, man, imagine how cool the parks would be like. But honestly, 100% being real, I think that Walt would have bankrupt the company trying to make his Epcot. I really do. Especially if he
kind of what I was thinking.
Older, he would have known that this was going to be like his last mark on the world, and I don't think it would have been a project that he would have been willing to let go of. And I really, really do think he would have bankrupt the company.
Yeah.
And trying to make it happen.
Yeah, but I don't know Walt personally, obviously, but I just feel like he's the type of person that if somebody like Roy had been there to rein him in, like Roy did many, many times, then we could have had such cool stuff going on in our parks until he died, inevitably many, many years afterwards, ideally. But I feel like he wouldn't have cared as much about the profits as he would have about the experience, and that would have made all the difference in the world as well. He wouldn't have been as focused on the shareholders being happy as he would have the guests being happy.
You know what the really sad bit of it all is I think because Walt lives longer, there is a stronger push for Epcot to actually be better, right? Like I think even if he's on his deathbed and they're building Epcot, I feel like because Roy was the one to rein him in, always knowing that that's what, that's his final thing, that's his big, for lack of a better word, going out with a bang. I think Epcot actually gets to be what it could have been. And maybe it doesn't work, and maybe that's all we need to know. But I also think that that's kind of like the sad bit of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But man, just imagine having Epcot today.
I don't know that I want Walt's original plan for Epcot.
I do. I want to live there.
I mean, obviously it would be incredible, but just thinking of the cost of upkeep and having to constantly have stuff updated within it to make it relevant, just nowadays that cost would be astronomical.
I just can't tell you guys how many times I've brought up the concept of a people mover in real life when I've gone to a city, especially my city that I live in, and how nice it would be to have good public transportation and make pedestrian the actual right of way in a city area.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, I think that's the part of Epcot that I wish happened the most.
Yeah.
Epcot is the city, not Epcot is the park, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see people driving through.
And even just the impact that it would have possibly had on other major cities.
Right.
Look at, obviously it would have been a smaller footprint to be working with, but to look at Epcot and say, well, okay, they look how well they make public transportation, pedestrian safety, this work-life balance, like everything about it, like how other smaller cities might try implementing those things, and that trickles into larger cities. Like, could have had a big impact.
Yeah.
But now we'll never know.
I'll never know. What a sad note to end on.
I kind of figured that we were going to end up somewhere on a sad note with what ifs, but
I'll end us on a not sad note. And this is me dreaming. This is me reaching for the stars, you guys. What if Disney made an adults only park?
to the better version of Pleasure Island.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wouldn't it be the best park? I would
Yeah.
What
love
if we
that.
just still had Pleasure Island?
Yeah, I mean that would be a great, like, reasonable alternative, Brian. But I'm thinking big here. I'm dreaming.
Okay.
I'm thinking in the parks, right? Like actually in a gated area, not like in Disney Springs.
Yeah, you could have Pleasure Island as a land in the Disney adult kingdom. That sounds really raunchy.
Okay. Yes, it does.
That
I
sounds-
like it.
I-
Make it, and you know what? Make it 21 up. You show your ID to get in, and then you don't have to show your ID the rest of the time
Nice.
you're there.
That's the
I
dream.
love that idea.
I also love that idea.
Oh, man, that's a thing that'll never happen, though.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. But it would be really cool.
It would.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.